Yes, now we jump to another group, because if you discuss, like with the Shias, are the Berbers minorities all over, or are they somewhere majority? And in Morocco, it's an interesting discussion. Because if you look just the origin of people, the roots of the big majority has a Berber origin. And, but if you look at the society of today, there are a bit different figures. But as far as I can understand, because of the growth in the population is higher in the countryside, there should be at least 50% Berbers. But they don't call themselves Berbers. It's Amasir in singular and Imasiren in plural. And nowadays it's more in Western literature that the word Berber is used and not any longer in Maghreb. But I will talk about minority within this minority, namely the Ibadis. And most people relate the Ibadis with Oman, because there they are in power and the majority of the population. And even people in Maghreb, in Tunisia, for example, there are so many intellectual Tunisians who have no idea that they have any Ibadis, even their ambassadors to Sweden. So it also shows that the Ibadis have had a more low profile and are more kept as a their society. The private life is really very private, and you marry inside your group and so on. But you have a right to cooperate with everybody, but you have to do it in a special way. Anyhow, how are they? And I am sure that all of you knows that as we are now discussing the roots and development of the role in Maghreb of the Ibadis during the centuries, just short. And a brief overview which generates many questions and some answers, because there are much more to be investigated. The Ibadis have its roots in Karagism, and that is, of course, back to the time of Ali and the arbitration that a group who were followers to Ali didn't accept, and they got the name, or they are called in the literature the Karajis, or those who went out or seceded, because they couldn't accept this kind of arbitration. They said that that is something which is not for human beings to discuss. It has to be decided that Ali should be, but when he starts to accept an arbitration, that means that he has lost his role and his legitimacy. Their religious duty to rebel against such rulers is important, and also to look at their egalitarian doctrine, which also attracted many newly converted to Islam. The Ibadi school made a big change looking at the first, the Karaji, how are known for. Because the Karajis, they wanted in a very brutal way, through killing, get rid of all these infidel Muslims. So there were groups of 20 to 100 men, very often young men, in Basra, in Baghdad, and in the region there, who just killed people. And this was not well accepted. So an elimination, like the ISIS today, of course, was developed by the rulers. And this Abdullah ibn Ibar, Al-Mori, etc., he said we cannot go on, we will be eliminated, all of us. And that should destroy completely the continuation of a real legal and the right way of Islam, because Way stands for the right way of Islam. So we have to change our strategy from an external jihad, from this killing, to have an internal jihad. And then they decided to do so, and a group escaped to Oman, and the school, the Ibadi school, is still relevant there. But if you ask Omanians, and especially in their own history writing about the Ibadism, they would like to say that no, the Kharijism, we have nothing to do with that. That's very important. So, well, anyhow, the thing was to struggle to resume the just Islam, and they had different principles. We had the revolt across the Abbasid Empire, and only in Oman and in North Africa, and a small, tiny group in Zanzibar are those who exist today. And in Maghreb, it is only small groups. We, as I mentioned already, that the Ibadi society in Oman is still existing and dominates the society. But visitors don't notice that, because the Omanis are also with business, in the administration and so on, working next to the others. But when it comes to the family life, there is a strict behavior. You marry within your society and not outside. And also when you study Islam, at the university in Muscat, for example, they don't lecture about the Ibadis normally. And that is about Sunni Islam. Well, it was much bigger areas in Eastern Africa when the Omanis dominated the region, but then the British took over. There was a lot of a big exodus of Omanis from East Africa. Many went back to Oman, and others became British citizens and moved to Britain. But still, there are big groups in Oman who speak Swahili. And in the business circles, there are a lot of exchange with Eastern Africa, also because of the language. We had a long time ago, also after, in the end of the 800 and until 908, also a kingdom, a kind of kingdom, Ibadi kingdom in Maghreb. One of them, kingdoms in Maghreb, and the biggest one, the most well-known, is Tahart. But when the Fatimid became stronger, they took over the region. And if you also look at the development a bit later in Morocco, you had the Almoravids, and they were Sunni. So actually from the Fatimid, from Shia and the others, of course, they didn't want to have any Ibadi societies and absolutely new kingdoms in the region. But for centuries, there were small, and it's still today, small pockets with Ibadi societies in Maghreb. And one of them, which have survived, is in Djerba. And if you look at most of the Imaziran, also Berbers in Tunisia, they belong to this group, both in Djerba and in other parts of Tunisia. In some parts they are only used by the government because they have no recognition at all, neither as Berbers or as Ibadis, but they are used as a very good income for tourism. In that, so buses are going to the area to show up with these communities in the country. During several hundreds of years, from 827 to 1223, actually the Ibadi society was dominating in Sicilia. And that is not mentioned in most history books, but so was the case. After that, the Christian church and the armies forced them to leave. Today, we have in some special areas. I have already mentioned Djerba in Morocco, in Tunisia, and the others are Mezab in Algeria. And there can be about 200,000 people or so. In total, it's can be 1 million or something like that, because it has been a lot of a big underestimation of the numbers in Tunisia, in Libya. I consider that up to 10% of the Libyan citizens are Ibadi. All of them are Berbers, because when this Ibadi form of Islam was spread to Maghreb, it was Berber tribes who dissolved their tribal system and introduced the Ibadi system of living. And in Libya, for example, is the whole region of Nafusa Mountains, which is dominated and Masab, as I mentioned, in Algeria, it is around the city of Al-Gadaya, and there are other small cities around that have this very special form of Islam. They are looked upon as a form of Calvinist of the Maghreb, because they are behaving very well. You shall not lie. You have to work very hard. You have to be very honest. You have to be. If you do a job, you have to do it perfect. You have. It's allowed. It's not allowed, to get extra profit from anything. So you have to work, be very correct, and so on. And therefore, they are very much liked as businessmen and appreciated. But you don't come close to them because their family is private. And also among those who emigrated to Europe from Algeria or from Tunisia and so on, there are very few people from the Ibadi society, because they want to marry and live in that special spot so they can have the whole way of the Ibadi lifestyle. And they have also to help all others in the community. So if they are very successful, as they very often are, as traders for centuries. In modern time, when Algeria got its independence in 1962, and then France considered that there were about 60,000 Ibadis in Mesab, they had 2,000-3,000 big companies. So there are no proportion of the success in business and how big the community is. But because they are so correct, they are accepted. Because if I started to cheat people, probably they should not exist. And they have created a very impressive socioeconomic wealth in their community. But the cities are closed. So the city of Al-Gadaya and the other small cities, after the sunset, they don't want to have anybody else inside the city. They are a bit suspicious and careful to have a distance, both to Sunni Arabs and to Sunni Berbers, although they belong to that society. Regarding the last thing, Sunni Berber society, if they are liberal Sunni Berber society, it works. but they are, very careful of not being too much mixed up. In the 1930s, they were looked upon by the French army, the military, and the rulers as a very suspicious group, and was presented as a Salafia movement. But the French colonial power in Algeria accepted to have special agreements with the Ibadis, so they could keep their independence. Well, what did happen during the Algerian Civil War, they also decided to keep outside completely, not be involved. And the government in Algeria, therefore, they put the big prisons, with political prisons, just inside the Ibadi region in Messab, because they knew that there shouldn't be any cooperation or anything should happen. But they also started then to develop new parts of the city outside the walls, which is very complicated because the access to water is very limited, and the more they create new areas for other Algerians outside the city, you have at once problem with the water. And the problem with the water creates frustration, and you have militant clashes between the Arab population outside the city and those inside. In the Arab Spring, it was quite interesting to see that both the Berbers in Tunisia and in Libya mobilized a lot, all their forces, to get rid of the rulers. They hoped that a new political setting should be a liberal one, and that it should also be more open for minorities and for following international conventions how to behave with minorities. So they had a very high expectation. They wanted also that they should be recognized in a way that it is stated in the new constitutions. And they were fighting a lot for these demands. But they didn't manage, neither in Tunisia or in Libya, to get it. Now the new text in the constitution, which is not accepted still, decided upon still in Libya, there have been so much of disputes, so the Berbers have boycotted all further discussions about the constitution. Well, so we see how did they then want to highlight, we are here, we are Berbers. They don't say we are here, we are Ibadis. But all of them are now mobilized as Berbers during this, during the Arab Spring and after. They wanted to be visible, to protect themselves as Berbers, but also in that way to keep their speciality as Ibadis. The outcome is that the result has been so far very limited, but they have highlighted also in a way that the Berbers in Djerba, the Ibadi Berbers, hosted the 11th International Amasir Congress, something that were in 2011, which was completely impossible during the time of Ben Ali. And the same thing during the time of Gaddafi, it was impossible to highlight the Berber origin of the Berbers in Libya as well. If you look at the constitution, there were only Arabs in both countries. But the situation with ISIS and Al-Qaeda in Sahel and in the Maghreb, there have really been, it has really developed a threatening situation, in particular for Messab region in Algeria. So you can almost find news on a daily basis that things are happening. Well, thank you.
Oh, thank you. In my research in the Saharan margin, what I found out in documents going back to 1492 and for 2 centuries after that, you mentioned that this cooperation between or link between Jews and Ibadis.
Yes.
I think you're in many ways you're completely right, because I would argue that the reason why we have the Saharan Jews now is because of the Ibadis and that cooperation, because as you saw a lot of expulsion of Jews from oases to the south, it's the Ibadis actually that provided that
protection in a way, because they could feel completely safe. They should never attack them, because they knew how it was, as it is, worse than is, to be marginalized
and
themselves.
Also in Oman too. I think I'm doing a project with a friend in Nizwa, in the University of Nizwa, and what you see, we visited a couple of oases in Oman, and in terms of even water, legal water, Islamic or Ibadi law when it comes to water, it's very similar to Maliki law.
Yes.
And you could see the influence of Ibadis on Maliki law when it comes to water management in many parts of these oases in the south.
Yeah, because it was so well organized by the Ibadis, so maybe therefore it took over, influenced. But regarding the relationship with the Jewish community, there are very good research done in Java. And you have probably seen the article, and it was published in that book that Emily is editor on North Africa, Judaism in North Africa, and how really the population appreciated to have Ibadis as their neighbors. Because I said, if something awful happens, we know that they will help us. But on otherwise, we don't disturb each other. We can have trade, but not mingling in the private sphere. Yeah?
I like your careful allusion to Calvinism for a number of reasons. And I think it's thought-provoking. I wonder if you have looked at this whole tension in Islam between one form of majority and a minority, religious group, and then how it ties to ethnicity. Because would it be possible, or is too far stretching it out, that to compare it to the Donatist question of the, back to the early Christian period, because that was an incredible debate. It's a doctrinal debate. It's an identity issue, economic issue as well, power issue. Sure. And then, of course, I'm not an expert on the region, but if we presume that those kind of people stayed there, so then you can see those sub-Sahara people and those who live in the coast, they really have a kind of a big power, and the region is one of the makeup. I don't want to give a Marxist interpretation, but it's like religion is, a form of expressing, identity and otherness and so forth.
Yes, and also to keep the society together. So, of course, it has, I agree completely. If I had more time, I could develop some of my thoughts, but another time, inshallah.
It's just the way that you're describing their whole attitude towards the private sphere is a direct parallel for me with the way that the Jews of Tangier have said it to me as juntos pero no revueltos. We are together with the other groups, but we're not scrambled.
Yes, yes. And that is also the same reason, strategies to survive is in their form of Islam.
Anything else?
Okay, then there is some black gold, everything outside. But coffee
coffee in the Swedish context. And thank you very much for all the